You're welcome back to my channel and to my series of videos on how to use Turnitin as a constructive feedback tool. In the first part, I covered how you can submit your work to Turnitin. In part 2, I looked at how you can check your originality score after you've submitted your work to Turnitin. And then in part 3, I started explaining how you can understand exactly what these numbers or these percentages mean. And the first case I picked was one where the submitted piece of coursework or essay came back with 98% originality. And I explained that it could be as a result of the author relying too heavily on one source, thereby copying several aspects of that source and pasting into his or her own work. And then I said again that it could be as a result of relying on several sources too much. And then lastly, I said it could actually be the work an author has submitted in the past. So it's actually picking up that work with minimal changes to it. And that I explained is what you call auto-plagiarism or self-plagiarism, which is not acceptable. Now, the second case I want to present to you will beg the question of how low should Turnitin originality score be then? How low? People keep asking me that question. How low should it be? Is 10% okay? Is 20% okay? In order to answer this question effectively, you have to ask yourself again, what exactly is Turnitin checking? After you upload your submission to Turnitin, it starts matching your work or comparing your work against other student papers or with internet sources, journals, periodicals, publications. And depending on the way it's set up by your lecturer, it could exclude your bibliography or quoted materials or small matches. And where this is the case, then it can actually reduce your percentage score, when bibliography is excluded. So at the end of the day, whether it's included or excluded, the lecturer is going to have a look at what actually it means. So when I present you with this, for instance, this submission came back with 24% originality. And if you drill down, you'll find out that 13% matched a student paper, 2% matched another student paper submitted to Rivers State University, and then 1% matched, So you find all the matches, 1% less than 1. But the big problem for this particular submission will now be this particular one, 13% matching a student paper. And depending on the size of the submission, even 2%, 1% could matter. So now let's have a look at what these actually represent. So if you look at this first one, this 1%, this number one matching 13, having 13% originality count, you'll find it, represented as 1 dotted across the paper. So this whole chunk has been copied just as it is, the ones highlighted in red. So this, for instance, is not a problem. Okay, so if this is all that the 2 symbolizes, which is not usually the case, then there will be no problem for the 2. But for the 1, this particular one, that's the one the student needs to consider if this is a draft submission. So when you now move further down, like I was explaining earlier, an originality of 24%, actually what it implies is that only 76% of the work is the student's work, that's originally. Okay, the student paper submitted to Coventry University has 13%. So it could be this same student's work, or it will be another student's work, where you might begin to think about things like collaboration, cheating, etc. So the rest of the sources make up 11% of the match. So if you add up all of these other sources, if this is everything, then it's going to give you 11%. But for this particular one is 13%. So 13% of this student submission belongs to another student. That is what it means. So another student has used 13% of this bit before this student submission. Now, if you have a closer look at this 13%, you can actually click on it and find out where it came from. All right, and then you can find out what it was submitted for initially. So it was submitted for another module by another student. Okay, and that's where you now begin to ask yourself, was this collaboration? Did they work together? Did the initial student give his paper to the student to copy from, or what exactly happened? So that's what you find on closer investigation for the 13%. Then for the second percent, when you click on it, you find out that it actually was submitted to Rivers State University of Science. So it tells you where these things come from. And that's why, like I said earlier, there is no hiding place. So we are not saying don't use sources. We are saying use sources to enhance your learning. So look at what they have written, read it, make your own notes, and write based on your learning. Now, if you drill further down, you can actually request for this paper from Rivers State University if you want to investigate closely to see how much of it the student has used, who the student was it this particular student before he came for this study? So those are the kind of things I would like to understand, to help me make, arrive at a decision based on what this actually means. So you can drill into the document source, like I said, and then decide to contact Rivers State University if you want. So something like QR code will be generated, and the passengers, if you submit, for draft, and then you see something like this, you could decide, oh, okay, yeah, QR code will be generated. How can I rephrase this in my own understanding? So as you begin to rewrite in your own understanding, it makes it easier for you to understand what you have written, and then it reduces the originality, score that matches someone else's work, because now it's more of your work because learning has taken place. Now, for this particular submission, you'll find out that the bibliography was not excluded. So if you come further down to the references and citations in the bibliography, you'll see it highlighting several sources. So these chunks are not a problem at all, because I know, for instance, that these are actually references. So any lecturer looking at all of these will know that these are references. So if you look at the number 4 here, it's still highlighting this as well. So this also came from this submission. This student paper, number 4, where 1% was picked up, this reference also came from there. So those are the things we are able to draw on or understand on closer investigation. Again, if you look at number 12, for instance, so for each of them, number 10, number 11, every single one, picking 12 now, you'll find out that for 12, you can actually come in and have a closer look, and you see what that relates to. Okay, so when you look at all these ones, remember all these ones highlighted in red, they all belong to this one. And then if you want to find 12, if you click on 12, it takes you to the one that refers to 12 as well. So how low should Turnitin originality score be? We're back to that question. And in concluding, I would say there is no set requirement for Turnitin originality score. No. In fact, if you have 0%, that in itself is a problem, because that means there's something that has taken place to make it impossible for Turnitin to identify the sources you have used or where you have actually copied from or read. But if you read very well, it's possible to have, say, 2%, 3%, and then it will have little matches. Yeah, that's expected, and that actually is good practice, So when you actually read, understand, you close the journals you've used, the periodicals, the articles, the textbooks, and then you make your notes, like I covered in my note-taking or effective note-making skills. Then you'll find out that when you now pull together or synthesize your findings to now arrive at your essay, the originality score is going to be quite minimal, because it's your understanding you have put together. So at the end of the day, the decision is based on the outcome of the investigation carried out on individual student submission, like I've tried to explain. And I hope that is quite clear. But if you have any questions, please ensure you write your comments and then I'll respond to you. So the case 2, where you have say 24% and then you are relying so much on different sources, having 1% or less than 1, or 13% on one particular source. This can happen when you have copied and pasted too much from several sources, just little chunks, and then you have not applied proper note-taking skills, like I explained earlier. So the recommendation is that you ensure you read, you understand what you have read from the periodicals, from the journal articles, textbooks, or your slides, and critically evaluate your source. Then make your own notes in your own words. That is the key. Make your own notes of what you have understood in your own words. Ensure learning takes place. And then cite where these ideas are coming from. And of course, create the reference as you go along. And like I mentioned earlier as well, it's best practice to use a referencing management system. That way you don't lose your sources and you're effectively referencing as you go along. So in summary, now you can submit your work to Turnitin. You can also check the originality score. You understand the meaning of the originality score number. I know that there isn't an acceptable number, but that the decisions are based on individual investigations. So stay tuned as I present you with my last case, just to ensure you understand completely what the originality score means and how, to respond to it. Thank you.